Tomasz Maćkowski, and I'm a solution architect working in Roche, in pharma company. And I'm responsible for gateway platform and UI5, also Fiori development. Today, so I would like to share some of the ideas we implemented to streamline our process of delivering UI5 applications, but also start discussion and maybe learn from you, from community, how do you solve similar challenges and what tools are used by others. Okay, so just to make sure we are on the same page, what I mean by continuous integration. So this concept is not new. It was, I think it's there in industry since early 2000s, initially described by Martin Fowler. And it's basically about introducing a practice to continuously integrate the code we develop, test it, and deploy it automatically. It's about getting the constant feedback about software quality, and it was introduced to avoid situation where separate project members or separate teams were working on different features, and at the end of the project trying to integrate into bigger project. So basically, it's closing the loop from creating code, building, testing, and reporting the results. And there are a number of practices which come together with continuous integration, and I would like to mention some of them and then describe how do we translate them into tools and processes around UI5 development. So first of all, there is a single source code repository. There is automation of build, just to avoid manual steps and also human errors in the process. Making build self-testing, so it's about getting also automated feedback about quality of the software we deliver. Commit frequently is to make sure that we detect errors, integration errors early in the process, and that we do it centrally, and every commit, every change goes through the same process on the central server. And of course, it only makes sense to do it if we really report the errors and do something with them. So if there's a build failure, there should be a process to fix it and correct it, because otherwise it doesn't make sense to have continuous integration and all the red lights on the integration server and no one is really checking them. And the last piece, which is I think also very important, is automating the deployment. So making sure that what goes in our case, the ABAP front-end server, the gateway, is really free of errors, and it's in the shape that can go to user testing. Okay, so the first point, single source repository. So as we know, on ABAP side, UI5 applications are stored in UI5 repository, which is in fact the BSP container. But it's not the BSP container. It's not recommended, and it's not meant to be changed directly. So it's not the way you should develop the applications, and it's basically just the runtime container. And there are a couple of interfaces how we can get there. So there are these reports, UI5 repository upload. There is Eclipse with Team Provider plugin, and there is Web ID where how we can upload to the ABAP server. But what is missing is the process before. Yeah. So if you are a single developer, you can still do it locally and upload it to the ABAP server. But if there's a bigger team, especially a distributed team, you have to somehow manage the source code and the process. And here come the source code management system. So I think it's quite obvious now that Git is the most popular solution. And basically the benefits are that we get versioning, we can restore, we can branch, we can collaborate, so multiple people can work on the same project, and we have also backup. So this is how we can streamline the development part. And in our case, we are using Git as repository. And actually, not public GitHub, but we have on-premise solution, which is called Stash. I think it's now the latest release. It was renamed to Bitbucket. Maybe I'll also have a question to the SAP team about support for private Git repositories from Web IDE. If someone can comment. Because I know this feature was also asked a couple of times on SDN. If we don't have anyone in the room, then...
So it's you are looking to me.
I'm looking for some SAP faces.
Yeah, but I think as of now, I'm not aware of like customizing for which kind of Git to use. I mean, can of course like you clone and enter the URL of the Git that you want to use, and if you can access it from that web ID. I mean, there are two ways. There's an internal Git that comes with web ID. That's so to say, it's part of the standard repository that's integrated into the HTTP. But if you clone from a different repository, then that's but you need to be able to access it from there.
It doesn't recognize privately hosted.
Yes, yeah, because you can get there. If you like include the routing on your project wherever it is, you can reach it from the HTTP. You need to route. But other than that, it doesn't care what kind of.
Yeah, as long as you have the cloud connection between.
Whatever.
I think it's the cloud network doesn't currently translate to Git connection. But anyway.
Yeah, or a VPN or something. You can somehow get there. Okay. The web ID needs to do something. In that case, it's another infrastructure.
For the build automation, we are using Grunt. There's alternative which was today also presented on your session at the Gulp. So basically, these are the two JavaScript task runners which are most popular currently in the ecosystem. And so Grunt, there's huge ecosystem of plugins to do basically different tasks during build. And under the underlying technology is Node.js and NPM as package manager. So basically, to include Grunt in your project, there are two files which are important. One is package.json. It's basically to manage dependencies and to be able to download plugins. And then there's Grunt file, which is the actual build script. And I have as a really the minimal example of project which is Grunt enabled. So in the package.json, just dependency to Grunt itself, and here the project is using one single plugin for HTML minification. And then in the Grunt file we have we loaded the plugins, we configured the tasks, and then we register it. So here we have just this HTML minification tasks, where each plugin has some configuration options. I can now show you a short live example. How does it work? So I have simple application, which with HTML file, just a hello world with some comments, and now here's the JSON file with dependencies and the build script. So we see there is just a single minification tasks, and it's set as default. So basically, using Grunt is there's a command line interface. First, I have to download the dependencies, and we can see they are downloaded to Node modules folder. Now if I just type Grunt, it runs the HTML minification task, which was the default, and created a distribution folder, and we see that the index was minified, so white space is removed and also comments. So that's the basic setup and workflow with Grunt. But of course, it can be used as a powerful build script tool. And in the presentation, I will show you which plugins do we use and how do we plug it into the build process. So a couple of tools which are also mentioned today and which we plug into the build workflow. So first of all, Bower for managing the front-end dependencies. OpenUI5 is now also available as Bower package, so this can be downloaded. We are also using the preload plugin from OpenUI5 Git repository. It's basically for merging multiple components into this preload file. It's for optimization for HTTP requests, basically bundling multiple files into single. Minification of CSS, HTML, images, and also two steps which are answering this make it self-testing build paradigm. So first of all, static code analysis. We have some rules for jshint and JS style. So basically some rules for JavaScript and also for code style around formatting to make sure that everything which goes to repository is standardized. And also unit tests with qunit integrated into the build. So with this set of plugins or tools, we can automate the end-to-end packaging and also verifying the application is adhering to the standards and unit tested. Okay, so this was still done on the developer machine. So I have my Grunt script and I can run it locally. But the missing part is the continuous integration server. So basically, continuous integration server is a central machine which is monitoring the Git repository and is doing the same in the background with every commit or triggered with a schedule or manually. And there are multiple solutions. So there is, for example, Travis continuous integration, which has very good integration with GitHub. Jenkins is popular, and we are using Bamboo because that's the same vendor basically who is providing the stash, Git hosting, and also Jira. And the continuous integration server, basically what it does is after the commit notification, it gets the latest version of sources from the Git, installs all the dependencies, and runs the script, and then in case of failure notifies responsible people. The last step is the deployment to ABAP, and I will show you how this is done a bit later. Okay, so the deployment, that's the the last step of the continuous integration workflow. So the continuous integration server, it's after all the checks, after all the minification, when build is marked as good, it's creating a zip file and publishing it to the artifact repository. And from there, the packaged application can be directly uploaded to our ABAP frontend server. So we did a wrapper around this UI5 repository load HTTP standard report and function module, mainly because the standard one doesn't use any authentication. So basically, this report is delivered in standard, but it assumes that the file is available somewhere on a public server. So there is no authentication step, and our artifacts repository is not publicly available. So we have just a simple step, which is downloading downloading the file, uploading it to the cache on the ABAP server, and then calling the standard function for upload. Okay, so just to wrap it up, the whole development landscape. So for the backend, we have the OData development done in the gateway builder, then registered on gateway server. And for the front end, we have local development, Git repository, and then this continuous integration server. And from there we can deploy centrally to gateway. So there's no connection from here that developers deploy locally different versions from their machines. Okay, so now I can show you a more another demo, which will be an end-to-end example with all the steps. And so basically this, the second example is based on the open UI5 demo application, the to-do application available on GitHub, and there is a build script built around it. So I'll just maybe open the Grunt file and show you the main tasks. So what we have here is we have the open UI5 preload tasks, which builds the component preload. We have some tasks to copy the final files to the distribution directory. We have jshint for static code checks. We have JS style and qunit for unit testing. Okay, so now I can also here open the command line. And as you can see in the build file, there are different tasks. So there is build tasks. There is also tasks which can be used for developing. There's tasks for testing, and there's the default task which will run on the continuous integration server. So now I will just first start the development tasks as an example. So this one creates a distribution and opens a local server and opens a preview. So there's also watcher tasks. So if I now change, for example, the HTML or JS, it's automatically reloaded on my machine from localhost. I can also open the qunit unit tests, and there are 2 tests created for this application. And using the graphical interface, I can run them and validate they are still passing. So that's the task which can be used by developers on their local machines. Of course, for the continuous integration server, there is no human interaction, and all these things have to be done automatically. So we can, for example, trigger the test tasks, which is using the Phantom.js browser in background. So basically, it's executing the UI test, but without browser interaction. So we see that the same unit tests were now executed from command line, and actually that's how the integration server is doing it in the background. Okay, so with this build script, we have the same source code checked into central Git repository. And now on the continuous integration server. So that's the UI of our CR server. And we can see here list of basically that's the report for the sample application. So we have history of builds, and we see that some of them were triggered by me manually, and some of them were triggered by a commit to Git repository. So there is reference to changes. If I go to build details, I can see unit tests which were executed. So basically the same unit test I had on my local machine. And here I have artifacts. So that's the distribution file. It's the tested, minified, and packaged UI5 application. And what is nice, there's also a cross-reference to Git. So from build, I can see which Git commit triggered the build, and I can see the diff of all the files which were in this commit. But if I also go to Git repository, here I have list of commits for this application, and for each commit, I see if the build triggered by this commit failed or passed. So I think that's a quite nice visibility into the development process and quality. So I will show just now the last part, which is deployment to ABAP. So I can just take the link of this file and run this report, and it's basically downloading the file and triggering the standard upload function. And you can see that zip file was unpacked, and the files were uploaded to the front-end server. And now I can go to SE80 and run the application. And I have the app deployed to Gateway, and it's already went through all the checks, unit tests, it's minified and packaged. So currently we are not automating this step in a way that not every commit automatically is deployed to Gateway. That's still a manual step that you have to trigger this report. But we have some ideas to how this could be done, for example, with some custom SICF handlers. But so far, it's more, it was not a technical restriction, but a process that we have that there's still a manual step. There's some QA to be done and change management process that enforces this manual step. But this could also be automated even further, so every commit can go to gateway without any manual intervention. Okay, so I think that was the demo part. The benefits, I think I mentioned most of them during the presentation. So the instant feedback and the catching the issues fast, meaning that you have if there's any error, you know it really fast, and you get a notification from the build server. You can enforce some corporate standards. With the reports dashboards, you have visibility, and you are reducing the surface for human errors, and so most of the tasks, including deployment, are automated and standardized. So not only it reduces time, but also potential errors. So that's basically how we are trying to set up this UI5 development. So now it's piloted with 2 projects with good results so far, and I'll be interested how and if you are using continuous integration, and how do you manage, for example, larger projects in your organizations. Any questions or comments?
I think that this was great. We do it in a very similar way, also using Grunt, and we use Jenkins, but eventually it's pretty much the same pipeline. And works perfectly fine. I think that's exactly the setup that everyone should aim for, whose intent is to do like professional UI5 development and not only like quick and dirty POCs or anything. That's exactly what you need. One question back to you. You shortly mentioned, quickly mentioned qunit. And testing. So do you do any kind of test-driven development, or do you just do like occasional automated unit tests? Or?
No, I think that's it's not the strongest part of the chain yet.
Okay. Yeah, we've been doing a lot of test-driven development, like really writing the test first and then doing the productive code, and that has also turned out to be quite beneficial. It takes a lot of effort to convince the team about this, because you can't just tell the team do it. They have to be convinced about the technique in order for it to work properly.
There are also code coverage plugins for Grunt, where you can actually measure and visualize how much coverage do you have, but we are not there yet.
We found the biggest problem was getting the client to sign off to that time up front to get build the tests and stuff. We just don't want that. If they can get it in quick and dirty, they'd much rather do that.
Yeah.
But we did so Jenkins used to use Testacula, which Karma or whatever it's called now.
Yeah, Karma.
We'll feed through that, but proof of concept is the only place we've got to use it on a productive app. That we just don't have the time to sit there and write all our tests.
Yeah.
They want to see something up and running as quickly as possible, and then take the time again to fix the problems. Yeah, this is ongoing battle.
We luckily found some customer who was willing to pay for that. So.
You don't have to tell the customer. Just do it.
It's difficult when you do a fixed price.
If you really believe in that, then you know that it will save time in the long run. So
yeah.
Yeah, so at SAP, that's pretty much also the same pipeline that we're using. Like we're using then also Jenkins, of course, and Maven for building, and we have a whole monte of plugins that check this and that, and of course the qunit stuff, of course, but also compliance with this or that, and do you expose external URLs that you're not allowed to, and that kind of stuff. So final build might take ages to complete, but then you get like this list, okay, you can deliver now. So. Okay. But it's pretty much the same pipeline.
But Maven instead of Grunt or with Grunt?
No, instead of Grunt.
Instead.
So I think the tough guys, you're using Grunt, right?
but for the final production of the applications, we're still using Maven. But I'm not sure whether we will do that forever. But right now, it's still Maven.
Okay.
And Maven is kind of weird sometimes.
And we are using Maven and Bamboo. So you have all the combinations.
Yeah.
We also so for like a certain set of apps that we use internally, for example, we are also using Bamboo to then deploy to the runtime, not for delivery but for internal usage. So yeah, I mean essentially we have all these tools in place as well.
Yeah, you can
different places.
Enumerate and combine them as you wish.
Really good thing to do is also quality on submit. There is hooks in any kind of versioning system where you can accept or reject commits.
Mm-hmm.
So that is kind of cool if you really want to put a big emphasis on code quality, that you don't even accept the pushes.
And we're using, for instance, Gerrit as a prereq.
Yeah, exactly.
So you just build it with Gerrit, and it's so say in some with Git you can make it so it's basically it's a Git repository, it's taken, the changes taken on top and builds before it will even get into a real repository.
Okay.
And from SAP, so we're using this for the standard development with Jenkins, but I don't think that this makes so say difference which infrastructures. But this I think something which helps us a lot because all the units, everything is running in this Gerrit build. And if something will fail, this change is not going into the real repository.
We do the same with GitLab, where every developer has to make a merge request. This merge request takes Jenkins, one of the pushed, and if it fails, it will get rejected.
Exactly.
For the testing part, what we're experimenting with, which is really cool, are visual diffs. So what you can do after running your karma tests or anything that has a browser instance behind it, take screenshots, then have those screenshots compared to each other automatically with previous builds. So you can actually see when a control or something doesn't look the way it's supposed to look anymore.
Yeah, but with UI you can got many false negatives.
Yeah, like, really a thing to do.
I wouldn't stop build based on this. Okay.
I really liked your deployment script, how that was working, going over to gateway. How does that handle transports when it's going into the gateway? It's deploying it to gateway.
So there are two ways. Like in the standard report, you can.
In the report, you specify transport.
Yeah, but you can do it here in the. So here was just for demo.
Yeah.
So it was using the local package.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but you can. There are two ways. You can either have a report on selection screen, but actually this HTTP function it accepts the description file, so you can specify the application name, transport, and all the properties and you can put it to repository, and then every commit gets it from this file and it's uploaded also using the same settings.
That's really smart.
That's the standard report, but not the repository load, but repository load HTTP has this feature.
I don't want to push you guys, but you're taking time off your coffee break.
Okay.